Hello, everyone. Today I'm here with Adriana Cavalcanti and Jorge Arteiro to talk about Azure Data Factory. We'll have introduction and demos. This is a good opportunity to show how Data Factory is working and how it is helping people with regular IT knowledge to deep dive on the data world. How are you going, guys? How's it going, Adriana, George?
Hi guys, it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
Yes, welcome, Adriana. Welcome. It's great to have you here. Hope you enjoy recording videos and share content. I think that's the main thing.
Sure.
And subscribe to the channel here. And what you have for us, Adriana, I know that you have a lot of experience with data transformation and ETL products like Azure Data Factory. How you play with that? What are you doing with these on the last few years?
Yeah, so I've been working for a bank back in Brazil actually. Now I'm more into cloud platform and trying to move on from the SSIS to cloud platform in Azure. So let's talk a bit about how we can create a pipeline and transform some data.
Adriana, you said about SSIS, that SQL Server Integration Service.
Yes.
I think that's the first thing is a lot of people still using SQL Integration Service. And maybe a video for the future, but it's a good way for people using SSIS and start learning Data Factory.
Yeah, exactly. Because in the end, it's the same concept, right? So you're just change where you are running your data and consuming.
Yes, and I think it's very easy to work with the cloud. We don't need to provision like infrastructure. We have everything, just a click and run.
Exactly.
I have done a lot of work, Adriana, on SSIS in my career and for companies, and I think a lot of people still using SSIS. And when I see Azure Data Factory, putting all those things together with Spark and all the data bricks, is kind of is amazing how people are getting on board on this new product.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a good product, by the way.
So let's share my screen with the presentation by Adriana, and let's start to talk about our agenda and stuff.
Yeah. So today, guys, we are gonna talk about Blob and Data Lake and DB. What is the Azure Data Factory, Source and Sync, ETL and ELT, the difference between those, and some demos.
Yes. So activate your notifications on YouTube to get when our demos is online, right? So
guys, let's imagine before we started, let's imagine that you've got a bunch of data coming from different storages. For instance, a CSV with Twitter data on your machine and a SQL table with your employees' details. Let's suppose you've got this company. And then let's suppose that we want to see which employee is the Twitter heavy user. So the guy who it's more into Twitter and Twitter every day. This is when the ADF or Azure Data Factory comes to show its power. In other words, Azure Data Factory put all data from different sources together. This is the main target of working with ADF. Not only put them together, but it also transforms the data. And finally, it stores the outcome onto another place, for example. we also can work with different data formats, right? So we've got Excel that it's the most used for data nowadays. Is still right. JSON, that's a format of JavaScript object for data. XML that comes from a web and kind of
maybe it's the JSON parent, right?
Yes, exactly. It's like yeah, it's the same. It's the same, but it's different.
Yeah.
The way you are gonna work with.
I remember the early 2000s, the XML was very popular, and then we got the JSON.
Yeah, XML is used a lot for working with some for example, the Google robots. When you are working with a CEO, for example, you want to foment or you want to show more your company in a Google. So your website has to have a good XML file for the robot can work properly. Parquet, which is a data format based on columns. Okay.
Yes, I think like Parquet or RC and Avro is pretty similar, but I'm hearing the data engineers, they have a discussion what's the best formats. They are inclined to say this is Parquet. We have the CSV. This is my favorite because I always get data in CSV.
It's the common one, right?
Yeah, right. It's the most common one. And the binary files that are just files, like pictures, images, we can deal with files. So these file formats are accepted by the Azure Data Factory, right?
Yes.
Here, let's talk about the storage we have today.
Yeah. So about a little bit about Azure Blob Storage. In the end, Azure Blob Storage is just a folder.
Like a file storage.
Exactly. It's like when you've got a folder on your machine, when you organize all your files. So it's the same. So you can storage the different data sets, and it works like that. It works like a directory, right?
Right.
So data lake it's when you have from different sources. Okay. And Azure SQL database is the same as you know about SQL, right? And Azure Cosmos DB, I think now Fernando is gonna show us a little bit about how to create a simple pipeline on Azure.
Yes.
Let's dive into this.
No, right. But first, we need to show here like what is an Azure Data Factory. So, an Azure Data Factory is a tool. You can load information in different data stores and in different data formats. For instance, here I have like a blob with files on CSV, Google Cloud Storage with JSON files, and an Amazon S3 bucket with Parquet files. I load these files here. I prepare these files, I tied up these files, I format these files, and I start these files like in a blob storage on a SQL database in the way I want to consume this data to apply a data analytics or a machine learn after, right? So this is basically what Azure Data Factory is. They call like a data integration tool, is data transformation tool, right? This is the Azure Data Factory. So one thing that's very important to keep clear is on the Data Factory, I always have a source of data, like let's make an analogy with water. We have this river, this is a data source. We have the Data Factory, this could be like a water treatment station. And we have here a sink. The sink is the place we store the data after we treat the data, right? So if you think we need to have a place to save the data. The Azure Data Factory never saves the data. So it's to keep it clear, because Azure Data Factory never saves the data, right? So remember that. And it was what Adriana was talking about. The data factory makes the ETL and the ELT. And here we have the process. On the ETL, we extract the data like from here, spreadsheet in a database. We transform the data with the transformation engine, in this case our Azure Data Factory, and we load the data in a target, in this case a database. The advantage here is you don't need to have a lot of deep knowledge to do that. You can drag and drop the things, you can do your data. Is easy if you need to change or to edit the way you get our data. But this is not the best format for big data. For big data, we have the ELT. It's basically the same thing. You extract the data, you load the data, but the transformation occurs inside the database. You have database like Hadoop, and like even like the SQL Server can do some data transformation. And the concept is you need to have someone with knowledge on this database language to perform these transformations, right? So this is the ELT. Now we'll have 3 demos. On the first demo, I will show how to copy data from AWS to a data lake. So should we move on?
Great. Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Fernando, just one thing, like if you go back one slide, please. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Adriana has a lot of experience doing these kind of things. My experience is that when you, let's say, you get like some information, let's give like a real life, example of that, because people maybe a little bit lost how they can use that, And how do you see that, Adriana? Like we have a data from like a financial system. Let's say you want to do like a payroll integration with like a payroll system. Every month it'll be something running to transform the data and put these in a different database for the payroll system to load. How do you see these things?
So the first thing is gonna be the extract. So as we can see in this slide, so we've got data source 1 that could be the CSV, which you have exported from your HR system, for example, and the other one, the data source 2, is your SQL data table, right? So you're gonna load, and this is for ELT, right? So imagine that you've got a huge company, so you've got a huge data, right? We are talking about big data. So you're gonna load into your source. So for people who, by the way, for people who is still working with SSIS, so the sink that you call here is the destination, and the extract, you're gonna use the linked service that we usually use, right, for this on the system at SSIS, right?
Yeah.
So you can transform it.
Yeah. I mean, they're very similar, like you said. They're very similar. They have, the entry point and the sink, the result, and you can combine things in between, join data, create like temporary tables where we can, run those stored procedures, and when using ELT, like a SQL data warehouse where you're going to load on that data source to like a temporary table where you're going to be able to join with, other tables and combine all that information and build like the big table, big data, the flat table, how you call flat table, with many columns, and you put all together into like a data warehouse, a data lake. And I think that's where the power is. We can do on the database, but Now we can do that inside a data factory, similar to what SSIS used to do. And
yes, basically, so putting it all together, extract is where your data come from, right? And transformation is when you transform your data, right? So you can do like data joining, data filtering, data derivation, data aggregation, data summarization, right? And everything that you can transform, you are gonna do on transform, right? And load is when you're gonna save those results, your outcome, right? Basically, this is where the ADF shows your power. And also you can, so as Fernando said, in the end, when you're sync, you can choose between blob storage or SQL.
yeah, that's great. I think Fernando's going to show now this working for us.
So this will be the demo one from the Azure Data Factory series. I will show how to copy data from AWS to a Azure Data Lake, right? So the process will create an Azure Data Factory. I will show how to access the Azure Data Factory, how to create the data sets, and we'll create the first pipeline with a data copy activity, and I will show a data flow activity. We'll copy the data from AWS to Azure, and I will show a little bit of debug and monitoring. So let's go. So here, okay, my Azure session is expired. So to start here, I create a new resource. Here, you'll be a data factory. It is, you go here.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Okay, so you click, it's very easy to create a data factory. You click create a data factory, choose a resource group. I have this easy ADF demo. Region, choose the closest to you and to your data set. In this case, I'm using Australian East. I called easy ADF demo. This is the name. Next step, you can configure Git to have like a Git ops from your code, but in our demo, I will skip it. Tag, always tag everything on the cloud if you need. This is always a good practice to tag everything on the cloud when you create. And the validation say, I forgot something here. Oh, this name is not available. Let's change to Azure tar. Okay, this is available. Create the Azure Data Factory. And this will take 1 minute or two. And let's wait from the deployment. And you know, if you, okay, it's good. It was created. So if you go to your resource here, the data factory you create, like I go from the scratch. If you are here, data factories, now we have here this data factory. When you open it, you have like a monitoring dashboard showing your pipeline runs, your activity runs, everything. To go to the data factory, you need to click this outdoor and monitor, right? It will open your Azure Data Factory like desktop application. But my favorite way is to go to this address, adf.azure.com. And you select your data factory here in your subscription, and you open your Azure Data Factory. This is pretty much like a desktop software. Here you show how it works. The first thing, I activate this data flow debug to make the things quicker on the next demos. We don't need to do that, but when you do it, we are deploying underlying infrastructure to process our data, right? So here, this home icon, we have some videos how to use the data factory. And these shortcuts are basically the same thing we have here. So
Fernando, you can see this SSIS integration here.
yeah,
People moving from SSIS, there is a shortcut, a way, to just get your SSIS package and just, migrate to Data Factory. It's a good way to start. It's a very good way if, for a company doing SSIS, just get your SSIS package and try to run here.
yes, if you are moving your database workloads from on-premise to the cloud, you will start to work with this SSIS integration. You will work like in the same way you used to work now. And in the future, you can migrate your pipelines to the new Azure Data Factory infrastructure. The next thing we have here is this author. You will spend your time here on this author thing. I will show in details later. Monitoring is the place you use to monitor. And here is to manage, is where you manage your linked service, your integration runtime. Your integration runtime is what run the transformations. In this case, we are using the auto-resolve integration runtime, but you can have like a local integration runtime, like in your on-premise computer to get some data from your computer. We can talk about that in another video. So let's start. I'll show. So I will migrate. I have here an AWS bucket with 2 sheets. Now we need to imagine like we have a company that work with sales, with product sales, and we have global representatives. And for any reason, these representatives use another cloud provider, and we need to get this data from this cloud provider and start this on Azure. We'll start this data on an Azure data lake. Let me show you the data lake here. We have this data lake here. This is like the storage account. When you create the storage account, we need to choose to create a container. We have to create a container here on the data lake. Okay, my session was expired, but no problem. I will create here a data lake. I'll call my container as a data lake. And my data lake container is empty here, right? So the goal will be to copy these files without read what is inside these files to this data lake, right? So how to do that? First step, here on the author, we use these data sets. We need to have the data sets here. Let's create a data set. This is very interesting to show you. We have a lot of possibilities. The data sets can be here: Amazon Redshift, S3, Apache Empire, Azure Blob Storage, Azure Data Lake, Postgres, Azure SQL, Azure Synapse, Cassandra, and you have like a lot of Dynamic CRM, Google AdWords, BigQuery, ADF. There are like MongoDB, PayPal. You can get your transactions from PayPal. Here, SAP, we have 4 or 5 integrations: Salesforce, Spark, Snowflake, Vertica, Zero. We have a lot. This is like from someone like Adriana who work with that. You have like freedom to choose what you work. So now remember we have sink and source. We'll start with our source. Our source will be here, this S3. So you remember I told we don't need to open the files. We will only copy the files. So select the binary option. And now we need to give a name, binary. You call this AWS binary for our data set. And we need a linked service. Let's create a new linked service here.
What's a linked service, Fernando?
A linked service is a sort of like an interface that has your credentials and connect to your data source or your data sink and deal this layer to get your files or to move your files to the destination, right? So here I have to open here. Okay, my credentials. I will copy and paste my access key and my secret. Oh, it's on the wrong place. My secret's here, and my access key is here. Oh, now my debug is on. It takes a little bit of time, and we test the connection. So, okay, connection successful. So my Azure Data Factory is talking with these Amazon S3 buckets. Okay, it's created. Here we need to select the file. Here we can see the buckets. The files are here. I select one, but I use a wild card to get the files later. And my second data set I will add here will be my data lake. And here Azure Data Lake Generation 2. And here on my data lake, I will save these files as binary. I will call here data lake binary linked service still. So because this linked service is within Azure, it's easy. We only select here the subscription, the storage account, and done. This is connect. I don't need the credentials, right? So I create here the linked service. I choose the container. So done. Pretty much we learn what are the data sets. Very important thing here. When you are creating, we can create, we validate to see, okay, it's everything okay, there is no errors, and we publish. This publish is like save. We are saving what the latest modifications we made here, right? So we have the data sets, and now we are going to create the pipeline, right? So to create a pipeline is the same thing. Click here, pipeline, add a pipeline. Let me show how this works. This space here is where we'll drag and drop and create the pipeline. Here in properties, we give this pipeline a name, copy AWS to Azure. It will be the name, right? Here on the activities, we have a lot. Copy activities, data explorer activities, Azure functions, batch service, Databricks, data lake activities, general. I use here from the general this weight because this is a data flow control. I will show you only as an example. ADD Insight. Actually, I think we'll record a new video only talk about these icons and what each one means, because this is too much information, right? So we have a weight here. This weight box only weight. It's nothing special. And we have a copy data. I'm using this weight only to show you guys, like to connect your activities. You just drag and drop, and you have this draw, this beautiful draw. We have here, for instance, this weight. The name will be weight. It's good. Settings, the time seconds. It will wait 1 second before I go to these activities, right? This second activity, copy data. Let's call copy AWS to Azure. Again, can be the same name. Source. Remember, now is the part. We always have a source and a sink. So where is my source? My source is this AWS binary. I would like to copy all files. So let's use this wildcard file paths and put a star here to come all files. This filter by last modified, this is very useful if you have, like, if you need to do delta copies and you run this pipeline every day and you will copy only the last day data. Because if you don't use this, you copy all the data every day. Recursive is to copy the data on the folders inside. We can delete the files on the data source. I won't do that, but if you need, we can delete, right? Next step, we need a sink. Let's select here our data lake binary. And let's confirm it's everything right. The data lake Yes, this is the data lake, is the place we'll have our files. So let's go back to the pipeline here. Settings, we don't need to use this. User properties, you don't need to use. Before I go, only to show a thing. If you are going to debug, this circle here is the place you, like, let's debug here. If I debug here, it will debug this only until this wait, and you will stop. It won't go to the next step, right? So it's all good here. I'm not debugging. Let's validate. There is no errors. Is everything all right? Let's publish it. Okay, it's publishing. And before I run, I show an important thing, that's the trigger, right? I will trigger now in a second, but I will show the possibilities we have. To create a new trigger, the trigger can be a schedule, like you put when you would like to run, or every 1 minute, every day. We have this tumbling window that is similar to the schedule, but we have some extra options. And we have one that's very interesting, that's event. So imagine when we move all representative companies on this demo to Azure, instead to use the trigger by times, when someone put like a new spreadsheet with the sales, we can use, we can get, like, when a blob is created, we can trigger our pipeline automatically. It comes with an event hub, and we run automatically our pipeline. Okay, but this is only to show all the possibilities. I will cancel it, and let's run this trigger now. Before I run, look here, my data lake is empty. My files on the other cloud are here. So let's trigger it now. And wait a little bit. It's running. While this is running, this is a good opportunity to show the monitor. The monitor, I clicked here on this icon on the monitor. And here is in progress. We can click here. And we have the pipeline. Okay, this is done. If I was a little bit faster, you see these checks marking. And here we can see the wait was only like a wait. We can see in this icon the input, the output, and this eyeglass, you see like the data came from S3 to the Azure Data Lake in 5 seconds. So we'll pay for 5 seconds only, not more than that. The speed was faster. And let's check if the data is here. Refresh. Oh, my data sets are here. And we successfully completed the first demo from Azure Data Factory. Good,
That's
guys.
Great. That's great. And if you go back to the pipeline, Fernando, you can see everything that we discussed before, that Adriana was talking about, all the activities. Those activities are pretty much the filters that we're talking about, the transformation, everything that runs on the engine to modify, to aggregate data. Everything is running, and you can use there's like a library of activities there that can be used.
Yes, and we'll have a next demo. Stay tuned. I will copy the content of these data sets inside a SQL database. So subscribe our channel and activate the notifications to see when the new video is online. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Faye.
Thank you, Adriana.
Bye.
Adriana. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you next